Hi, my name's John Metz. This is Unit 7 video. I chose to do it on the conflict theory. Before I get into the introduction, we're going to talk about the conflict theory, some pros, some cons behind it, as well as some problems associated with it, possible research questions, case studies, and maybe some questions people would ask about it. I chose the conflict theory, although technically not rooted before 1960. It was basically Karl Marx who came up with it. He basically said the inequality in property, the what people own, kind of contributes to crime. There's the haves and the have-nots. I think it's important to revisit the conflict theory, though, in a contemporary mindset, because in a capitalistic society, instead of property, it's more money. Um, Conflict theory basically assumes that society is conflict-oriented rather than a consensus-oriented society. They focus on the political structure of society and those who make and enforce the laws. Typically, in our society, that tends to be the wealthy people. I'm going to call it the haves, or the people with the money, and they basically simply can prefer the explanation of these types of people be focused on political and economic conditions that they favor and they push for. On the flip side of that, we're looking at crime, not the actual individual criminals, being pushed by those have-nots, and being those are the people who are being oppressed, who are committing the crimes basically out of a mindset or a gap of being oppressed and being a have-not and operating against the powers that be. With that being said, it is important to look at conflict theory in lots of ways. Social and economic institutions are tools sometimes to the struggle among groups or classes. We can think of this as the workforce, minimum wage, people forced into a lower position who don't have the opportunity to make the money that other people do. These can be, significant factors that push people into the life of crime. There is some pros for it, basically saying, hey, these people can commit crimes because they're oppressed, but there's also some arguments against. One major criticism of the conflict theory is it ignores basically individual behavior or the effect of, let's say, a individual and their family and how they're brought up, or the relationships that they have, and basically how they operate in society. Family education, we all know, can play an important role in people's upbringing. Conflict theory doesn't really focus on these individual attributes. It doesn't really focus on individual needs or interests, but rather lumps them again into these kind of have and have-nots. And the have-nots are the ones typically creating crimes, per se, to try and gain a leg up. It does raise some interesting questions if we were to look at not just the problem, but like a case study. Well, hey, if we're oppressed and there's crime, how come there's countries with more oppression, right, that have less crime? So that would be an interesting question, or a research question. Does conflict theory alone support all criminal activity? Well, that would be hard to say. So you can basically have an analysis of a country or another situation where people aren't as oppressed, but crimes still happen. In our country, we could say 2008, with the housing crisis boom, there was a lot of white-collar crime. And those people, like Bernie Madoffs in positions of power, were committing crimes even though they were haves versus not the have-nots. How does greed play a factor in conflict theory? I think that's a good question you could raise as well. Some other questions you can raise about this theory is, how does it alone lead to criminal activity? Again, I think there's lots of factors. There's social learning theory mixed with social contract theory, and probably part of this theory that all lead to that criminal behavior. And then again, another question we could ask is, how come people in white-collar positions commit crime if the conflict theory is 100% accurate to define what and what doesn't make a criminal? And then the last thing we need to talk about, it could be a question asked again with this theory, is how does genetics, like someone's innate genetics versus their environmental stimulus and nurture and nature, play into them becoming a criminal on top of conflict theory? All questions asked. In summary, I do believe conflict theory is a significant portion of what drives people to crime, acting under oppressed conditions and being somebody who's forced sometimes to commit crime because, again, they are a have-not. And again, there are many areas of this theory, but I thought it was important to raise this question, and that's why I chose it. My works cited were our criminology theory book, by P. Frank, R. Hummel's Understanding Conflict and War, L.J. Siegel's Conflict Theory from the Criminology Book 7th edition, and then Advantages and Disadvantages of Conflict Theory in Education, which was retrieved from the Education Summary. Thank you for watching, and hope to hear back. Bye.